ಎಲ್ರಿಗೂ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ. ಈಗಾಗಲೇ 2 ಸೆಷನ್ಸ್ಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ನಾನು ಫಂಡಮೆಂಟಲ್ಸ್ ಆಫ್ ರಿಸರ್ಚ್ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಹಾಗೂ ಟೈಪ್ಸ್ ಆಫ್ ರಿಸರ್ಚ್ಗಳ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಮಾತಾಡಿದ್ದೀನಿ. ಅವುಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಏನೇನು ಪಾಯಿಂಟ್ಸ್ಗಳನ್ನು ಹೈಲೈಟ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು, ಏನೇನು ಓದ್ಕೊಳ್ಬೇಕು ಅನ್ನೋದನ್ನು ಕೂಡ ತಮ್ಮ ಗಮನಕ್ಕೆ ತಂದಿದ್ದೀನಿ. ಬಹುಶಃ ಅದು ನಿಮಗೆ ಪ್ರಯೋಜನಕಾರಿ ಆಗಿದೆ ಅಂತ ಅಂದ್ಕೊಳ್ತೀನಿ. ವಿತ್ ದ್ಯಾಟ್ ಇನ್ ಮೈಂಡ್, ಇನ್ ಕಂಟಿನ್ಯೂಯೇಷನ್ ಆಫ್ ದ್ಯಾಟ್ ಡಿಸ್ಕಷನ್, now I am starting another topic which is most important on methods of research or research methods. We know that to do anything there is a systematic way, there is a method, there is an accepted method. We do namaskara like this, we do salute like this, we do shirasashtanga pranama like this. So to do anything, to do whatever, to do surya namaskara or to do whatever we want, to eat, to drink water or to talk to people, give respect. So there is a method of conversation, there is a method of eating food, there is a method of talking to persons, there is a method of teaching, learning. For everything there are certain accepted methods. In order to call research as a scientific method, it has to follow certain accepted methods which are tested, which are reliable, which are proven themselves that using those methods, yes, you can conduct some kind of research. So today we will have a look upon these things. Simple questions might be asked on this, multiple questions will be asked on this, matching, logical sequencing, assertion, all possible questions could be asked on research methods. So you have to have a clear look at the methods of research. You should go clearly what methods of research means and how they are acceptable to, how you can conduct. You can see this picture, you can see that types of research, there are different methodologies: historical method, ethnographic method, content analysis, experimental, correlational, single subject, casual, comparative, survey. And you can see that there are actually 3 types of methods. One is qualitative, another one is quantitative, and another one is research by practitioners. Practitioners who actually do the action oriented kind of a research. So there are certain subgroups within each group and all that. So these are some of the accepted methods of doing research. So they can ask types of research and against which so they will give how it is done and all that. They may ask you to match them or do stepwise, what is to be done first, what is to be done then, what is to be done. For example, laboratory test, what is to be done first and what is to be done at the later end. So this kind of a logical sequencing could also be asked. We will see one by one. Quantitative research. Last time itself we have seen in the types of research that where magnitude is involved, where quantity is involved. The first one is a survey research. Survey, we are conducting survey, big survey or a small survey, where we collect as much data as possible, the data in quantitative form, and that data we quantify in terms of percentages, in terms of percentiles, in terms of some magnitude, some graphic representations and all that. The second one is we establish correlation, X is related to Y, correlation research. This is purely based on quantitative research. We try to establish some kind of a relationship between 2 variables. Causal comparative research, why this has happened and is there any comparison. Causal comparative research is again another kind of a quantitative research, causal comparative research. And then we have experimental research. Again in experimental research, it is purely based on some quantity, using this pesticides, this much of you can grow this, or using that you can do this. So some kind of experiments are done, some kinds of experiments are done using certain controlled environment, using controlled environment, we try to find out the effect of that. So we normally do it, much of it is either done in the laboratory or it is done in the field based surveys, and normally experimental research is another quantitative research. So they can ask which of the following is not a quantitative research. They can give 3 options from here and 1 option from the qualitative analysis. They can ask which of the following is not a qualitative analysis. So they can list 3 of them and 1 from this list. So they can ask in that way. Multiple type questions or single questions could be asked on these very simple things. One-to-one interview. This is again a quantitative one-to-one interview. We can go for CRE study research, record keeping. We will try to have the records, we will process the observations, or we conduct some ethnographic research on ethnographic community. We conduct research and we try to find out data and we try to interpret that, or we will concentrate on focus groups. We will focus on certain focus groups, and using those focus groups we try to extract the words. So these are all certain methodologies using which we can come out with some kind of a qualitative analysis. So one-to-one interview, when we discuss one-to-one face-on interview, so I try to elicit data from him, not only statistical data, we elicit qualitative data from them. We try to elicit qualitative data, we try to interact with them, how we have done this, how you did this, what happened during that period. Then when interviewee and interviewer are facing each other, so there is a possibility that some kind of qualitative information, qualitative results will come out. So the same case study research also, the same thing will happen. Case study research is very popular as far as medical sciences or agricultural sciences or life sciences is concerned. They study the case, and for each case the results are different. For BP patients, certain insulin tablets or insulin injections or certain tablets have to be provided. Yes, it is true, but case by case, whatever tablets that I am taking are totally different from another person who is taking tablets for the same diabetes mellitus, or for the blood pressure, the tablets that I am taking are different, the tablets that other person is taking is different. So these are based on case by case, you cannot generalize, it is applicable to specific case, what is this, in this case how it can be treated. So this is case by case. Case study is a qualitative research analysis where generalization is not possible. Then we keep the records, record keeping. By keeping the records, we will have the records, and using those records we try to analyze the things. Again, another qualitative analysis. Process of observation, we do observe lot many things. By making observations we will try to conclude that this is my result, which is qualitative based results. Ethnographic behaviors, focus groups is again, we are not taking all the sample, we are focusing on certain groups and we are focusing on that group and that behavior, and where I will get the qualitative results. This is how either the quantitative research is conducted or the qualitative research is conducted. Again, I told you, which of the following is a qualitative, 3 from there and 1 from here, single question, or 3 from this group, 1 from that group. You can pick 3 answers, multiple questions. This type of questions might certainly be asked on these research methods. And then how you collect the data, methods of data collection. Experimental research can be done in 3 ways. One, you can conduct using laboratory experiments. Laboratory experiments are normally conducted in science and technology discipline. So everything is done, everything is taken to laboratory. Our blood sample is collected in the morning around 7:30. Some 20 ml or 10 ml blood is collected. Based on that collected blood or based on collected urine, based on whatever that they collect, Based on the sample that they collect, they analyze it in the laboratories and they come out with some output, some result that HbA1c is like this, ppbs is like this, FBS is like this. Laboratory experiments they conduct. I am just giving an example. So, many experiments are conducted in the laboratory. Many experiments are conducted in the laboratories. Based on the laboratories, results are standardized and these results are replicable, repeatable. You can repeat these results. You can repeat these results. Laboratory research. So, where instruments are used, equipments are used, time is fixed, certain methods are adopted, certain accepted methods. Laboratory means whatever you can do in the laboratory, no. If you want to do certain HbA1c, what instruments you are using, which instruments you are using, which method you are using. So, it all depends on that. So, they will come out laboratory experiments. So, they are quite realistic. They are based on the sample taken. They are based on the sample taken. They are based on the sample taken at that particular time. What was the result and all that. So, they are quite clear, quite reliable unless and until there is a fault in the instrument or faultily you have conducted that experiment, unless and otherwise they are quite reliable. The second method is simulation. We are actually simulating the things, we are creating the things, simulating. Then the third one is field experiments. We conduct experiments in the field, we go to the field and we conduct experiments. Non-experimental methods, remember my previous class, I have told that these are the two types, experimental versus non-experimental. Among non-experimental, again we have a field based, where in this field experiment there is a control, but in non-experimental method there is no control. Field study, historical, census, case studies. Case studies there is no control. The two cases of heart attacks are totally different, two cases of something is completely different, they are quite different. Accordingly their diagnosis is different and accordingly the treatments are different. Case study method. The third one is library method. We are not going anywhere, we are doing our research based on the records available, either the content analysis or records analysis or metric studies which have gained importance now. Based on the data which is available, based on the sources, we apply statistics and we try to conduct the H index is like this, the G index is like this, the impact factor is like this. We try to come out with different research metrics, the research metric components. Using those research metric components, alt metrics, those technologies have come in now. So, these are the three prominent: experimental, non-experimental and library method. So, we will just go to each of the methods one by one and we will try to discuss the salient features of each of these. Laboratory experiments. As I told you that there is a complete control over laboratory situation. If you are planning to buy a new two-wheeler, particularly new two-wheeler, headlines you will see 83 kilometers per liter, big headlines, 83 kilometers per liter, 93 kilometers per liter, 120 kilometers per liter. You will see that kind of a mileage that your vehicle gives. But you will forget to see there will be an asterisk mark and above that 120 or 83 kilometers, above that there will be an asterisk mark. At the bottom line they write the asterisk mark for that note. These results are obtained in the laboratory conditions. That 83 kilometers per liter, that vehicle has given that mileage in the laboratory conditions, and our roads are not like laboratories. Our roads are completely opposite to the laboratory conditions. Don't come out here and then say, so you had given 83 and my vehicle had given 53 mileage. They will show that These results are obtained in the laboratory conditions where there is a complete control over the environment. Precise measurements. Measurements are accurate, very precise. They are very precise. They are very precise. What is the rate of your heart blockage, or how much your retina has infected? I mean, they come out, whatever be the things, they will try precisely. See the Chandrayana part, how precisely those laboratory conditions have given results there at the end. How precisely it was completely controlled in the laboratories of ISRO laboratories. Many ISRO laboratories together have controlled that. How precisely they have got the measurements. It was showing so many meters in velocity speed, but at the end it was 0 0. The moment it touches 0 0, all of us have clapped. Precise measurements. This is what we expected in Chandrayana 2, which did not happen. It was not precise. It was a crash. High internal validity, that is what I am saying. In the laboratory conditions, there is a high internal validity. Experiments can be replicated, that is what I am repeating. Experiments can be repeated. So, the same experiments you can repeat. Organizational research is difficult in this part. Organizational research is difficult, it is not easy. Organizational research is very difficult to conduct in laboratory environment. Some phenomena cannot be studied in laboratories. Some phenomena for that matters you cannot study in the laboratories. This is another disadvantage or a demerit. You cannot, not just because everything is done there, certain things cannot be studied. Number of variables like age, race, intelligence, etc. cannot be manipulated by experiments. This is another factor, this is another characteristic of research methods. It requires high skill. Working in laboratories requires high skill. Not anyone can do, that is what I said. It requires how to use those equipments, how to do experiments. If you do not know how to conduct an experiment, you are not, definitely you will not get the results that you are aiming to get. Lack realism. This is a big problem of laboratory experiments, because they are conducted in a controlled environment. It lacks realism. That is what I told. The first example of two-wheeler, 83 kilometers per liter. So, that consumption, the mileage is got under perfectly controlled environment, but our roads are not controlled. Our roads are not like that. Traffic is not like that, traffic is not controlled. So, you will not get that result outside the laboratories. It lacks realism, it lacks realism. It may not be generalized to real life situation. This is another problem, may not be generalized to real life situations. These are the characteristics. They can ask you multiple questions, which are the characteristics of laboratory experiments. They can certainly ask you. Or these methods they will list at one point and the characteristics at the other point, and they can ask you to match them. They can ask you to match them. Or in a laboratory system, how experiments are carried out. Process could be asked. So, sequencing or arrangement, matching or multiple questions could also be asked, or a statement can be made like that. Laboratory experiments are conducted, they are completely controlled, they will have a completely controlled over laboratory situation, statement number 1. Statement number 2, it does not require any skill. Statement A is true, statement B is false. So, this is how true false could also be asked using those things. So, keeping all the probabilities, you can study this laboratory experiments or any method for that matter. Simulation. Simulation, the setting is deliberately structured. It is deliberately structured. There is a greater realism. There is a greater realism. There is a greater realism. But even I just do not accept there was one incident, there was one investigation on aircraft accident where the pilot was summoned, pilot, co-pilot were summoned, and they were asked, why you took the flight to the waters, why not to the airport. This was a real case, and the simulation technique showed that safely that plane can be landed, safely that plane can be landed in the nearby airport. Then what was the necessity to take the flight to the waters? And investigation went on, and finally the pilot proved that in the greater realism part, or setting is deliberately structured. He asked one question whether the person who is operating, who was using that simulation technique, under how much pressure he was he under any pressure? Was he under any fear that 173 passengers on board are at risk and all those lives are in his hand? Whether the person who is operating that simulation, was he under that pressure? Have you used this? Whether this setting is deliberately structured to include the psychological pressure on pilot and co-pilot? This was the question asked by the pilot, and the jury did not have answer to it, because simulation is a simulation. So, they simply operate, and there is many realism and all that, but psychological pressure which the pilot and co-pilot had at that particular moment, where they were supposed to take the ultimate decision of going this way or going this way, they have to decide it in a fraction of a second. The amount of pressure which they had, certainly this simulation technique did not have, and he proved that yes, I took it because I felt it safe and I saved all the lives. In fact, if you involve that kind of psychological pressure, again do it, have some fluctuations, decide, you take some time to decide. Then it was tested that on the way to airport itself, it should have been exploded. This is how that test has been proved. I am not accepting that again, but there is a greater realism, compared to laboratory experiments. Greater amount of control over external sources, yes, there is a greater control. Greater ability to manipulate. Many of the railway accidents, many of the air accidents have been resolved using this simulation techniques. Reasons have been decided, and even our Chandrayana, or now whatever they are planning, they are taking some astronauts to moon and all that. So, using simulation techniques, trainings are being given to them. Greater ability, high participant involvement. Yes, high participant involvement is there. But one simulation technique is too expensive to conduct, is too expensive. There is increased risk of subjects being psychologically harmed. Again, this factor is also there. This is about the simulation techniques, and very costly, not easily, you cannot use simulation techniques for each and everything, because cost involvement is too much, just cannot think of it. Under certain circumstances, they are supposed to use those simulation techniques, so they use it. So, cannot be used for all purposes. This is one thing. Field experiments, it is done in a realistic situation, occurs in a natural setting, it occurs in fields. One or more variables are manipulated, by controlling few situations. They control one or more variables are manipulated by controlling few situations as much as possible. They control few variables. These things are conducted in agriculture, horticulture, botanical research. in sports, athletics, cricket, football, they try to control certain environments. It is done in a natural system, but using certain ways. School, factory, hospital, person, army camp. So they try to control certain few situations as much as possible to solve practical problems. Field experiments are done to solve practical problems. Field experiments are done to solve practical problems. That is why net practice is done wherever you might have seen that Shubman Gill was practicing or Shreyas Iyer was practicing against the short pitch deliveries. So the next day when he got out for 5 and the end result was that he scored around 83 runs in the last match. Shreyas Iyer, he practiced the short pitches. He was not good at that. On a field experiment he asks the bowlers to go for short pitches only and he tried to play them. So it is done in a natural environment, they will try. So maybe agriculture, they grow the crops, horticulture, they grow certain crops again, botanical research, these are all done in a natural field setting where they try to manipulate one or more variables and they will have control over few situations. They will have control over few situations as much as possible to uncover possible relationships, So this is where to uncover possible relationships, how we can get that person out, because he covers the mid stump and he is not good at playing spin. So how to uncover that? How to uncover the possible relationships? He will try to come in front of that and ball will touch the pad and we can get LBW. Possible relationships, or go for a flighted delivery, he will try to hook it and we will set the field in such a way that he could be caught easily. Try to explore. Field experiments are done to test broad hypotheses. To study complex social issues, field experiments are conducted to study complex social issues, to study the influences, what influence X has on Y, what influence Z has on B, processes and changes, how the changes takes place and all that. So field experiments are normally preferred for these reasons. We have another method, field study. It is an ex post facto study. Field experiments without any control in natural settings. Please make it a point. Field study, this is an field experiment without any control over natural settings. There is a natural setting, does not involve actual manipulation of independent variables. There is no manipulation of, does not involve actual manipulation of independent variables, can be exploratory, descriptive and sometimes hypothesis testing. Hypothesis testing may also be there, but in majority of the cases field studies are purely exploratory or descriptive in nature. Organizational cooperation is too difficult. In order to conduct a field study, organizational cooperation is difficult. Casual inferences cannot be drawn. You cannot draw because it is merely a field study, you are whatever is there, that data you are taking and you are interpreting it. So casual inferences you cannot draw. Chances of unknown sampling bias always exists. Measurements may not be precise. Since it is a field study, ex post facto, done basically as an explorative one, so not very precise, results may not be too precise. Relevancy of data may also be a big problem. In field studies compared to field experiments, but of course field study is an accepted fact. To know the exploratory results or to know the descriptive results, yes, this is done, and if it done more systematically, it can also be used for hypothesis testing. can also be used, but compared to field experiments, this is less reliable as far as relevancy of data is concerned. Historical research, I have really put a question mark. I have put a question mark because historical research is difficult to carry out, difficult to precisely tell what has happened in the past, really difficult to tell what has happened in the past. A decade back incident you just go, or a 6 month back what incident has taken, can you narrate how really it happened, that event? Do you remember that? Have you recorded it? So systematic, but actually historical research is one of the best research to know the past activities. If done systematically, if done objectively good without any subject bias, systematic collection and evaluation of data to describe, explain and understand actions or events that occurred sometimes in the past. ಹಿಂದೆ ಯಾವುದೋ ಆದ ಘಟನೆಗಳನ್ನು ಅದರ ದಾಖಲೆಗಳನ್ನು ಇಟ್ಕೊಂಡು ಒಂದಿಷ್ಟು ಡೇಟಾ ದತ್ತಾಂಶಗಳನ್ನು ತೆಗೆದುಕೊಂಡು ಅದನ್ನು ವಿಶ್ಲೇಷಣೆ ಮಾಡಿ ಅದು ಯಾಕೆ ಹಂಗಾಯಿತು ಏನಾಯಿತು ಅದಕ್ಕೊಂದು ರಿಲೇಷನ್ಶಿಪ್ಪನ್ನು ಕೊಟ್ಟು ಅದನ್ನೊಂದು ಕನ್ಕ್ಲೂಸಿವ್ ಎವಿಡೆನ್ಸಿಗೆ ಬರೋದು ಹಿಸ್ಟಾರಿಕಲ್ ಡೇಟಾ. ಬಟ್ in this method you cannot manipulate, or there is no control, no manipulation or no control over variables. ಯಾಕಂದ್ರೆ ಆಗ ಹೋಗ್ಬಿಟ್ಟಿದೆ ಅದು. It has already done, it has already happened. Historical research, there is no control. ಏನಿದೆಯೋ ಅದನ್ನು ನೋಡಿಕೊಂಡು ಅದರ ಬೇಸಿಸ್ ಇಟ್ಕೊಂಡು ಒಂದು ಕನ್ಕ್ಲೂಷನ್ಗೆ ಬರೋದು. ಒಂದಿಷ್ಟು ಕೆಲವು ವರ್ಷಗಳ ಹಿಂದೆ ಗದಗ ಜಿಲ್ಲೆಯ ಒಂದು ಗ್ರಾಮದಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದಿಷ್ಟು 30-40 ವ್ಯಕ್ತಿಗಳ ಅಸ್ಥಿಗಳು ಸಿಕ್ವು, ಬೋನ್ಸ್, ಎವ್ರಿಥಿಂಗ್, ಬುರುಡೆಗಳೆಲ್ಲ ಸಿಕ್ವು. ಸಾಕಷ್ಟು ಜನ ಏನೇನೋ, ಅದು ಸಾಮೂಹಿಕ ಹತ್ಯೆ, ನರಹತ್ಯೆ, ಯುದ್ಧದಾಗ ಸತ್ತಿದ್ರು, ಏನೋ ರೋಗ ಬಂದು ಸತ್ತಿದ್ರು, ಎಂತೆಂಥದ್ದು ಅವರವರಿಗೆ ಬೇಕಾದಂಥ ಅನಾಲಿಸಿಸನ್ನು ಅವರವ್ರು ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ. DNA ಟೆಸ್ಟ್ ಕೂಡ ಆಗಿರಬಹುದು. ಯಾವುದೋ ಒಂದು ಹಿಸ್ಟಾರಿಕಲ್ ಘಟನೆ ಅದು ಏನೇ ಇದ್ದರೂ ಅದನ್ನು ಡಿಸ್ಕ್ರೈಬ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥದ್ದು, ಎವಿಡೆನ್ಸನ್ನು ಕಲೆಕ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥದ್ದು. ದ್ಯಾಟ್ಸ್ ವಾಟ್ ಐ ಟೆಲ್ ಯು, ಇಟ್ ಈಸ್ ವೆರಿ ಡಿಫಿಕಲ್ಟ್ ಟು ಅನಲೈಸ್ ಆಬ್ಜೆಕ್ಟಿವ್ಲಿ. reconstructs what happened during a certain period of time as completely and accurately as possible. ಇದು ಉದ್ದೇಶ, ಟು ರೀಕನ್ಸ್ಟ್ರಕ್ಟ್ ವಾಟ್ ಹ್ಯಾಸ್ ಹ್ಯಾಪನ್ಡ್. ಹಂಪಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಎಷ್ಟೋ ಗುಡಿಗಳು ನಾಶ ಆಗಿದ್ದಾವೆ. ಟು ರೀಕನ್ಸ್ಟ್ರಕ್ಟ್ ಯಾಕಾಯಿತು, ಏನಾಯಿತು, ಹೆಂಗಾಯಿತು. They have different historians have come out with different reasons, different assertions, different findings. It uses different methods, a theoretical model leading to a content analysis, use of patterns or themes. ಇದು ಈ ಗುಡಿ ಹಿಂಗಿದೆ, ಇದ್ರ ಕನ್ಸ್ಟ್ರಕ್ಷನ್ ಹಿಂಗಿದೆ, ಇದ್ರ ಗೋಪುರ ಹಿಂಗಿದೆ, ಇದು ಹಿಂಗಿದೆ, ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ಇದು ಇಂಥವನ ಕಾಲದ್ದು, ಇದರಲ್ಲಿ ಇಂಥ ಸ್ಟ್ರಕ್ಚರ್ ಇಲ್ಲ, ಆದ್ದರಿಂದ ಇದು ಜಕಣಾಚಾರಿ ಕಟ್ಟಿಲ್ಲ, ಇಂಥ ರಾಜಮನೆತನದಲ್ಲಿ ಇಂಥ ಕೆರೆಗಳನ್ನು ಕಟ್ಟಿಸ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥ ಒಂದು ಇತ್ತು, ಹೀಗಾಗಿ ಈ ಕೆರೆಯನ್ನು ಕೂಡ ಅವರೇ ಕಟ್ಟಿಸಿದ್ದು, ಇಲ್ಲ ಇದು ಆ ಕೆರೆ ಅದು ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಆ ಸ್ಥಾನದಲ್ಲಿ ಅದು ಇರಲಿಲ್ಲ, ಇದು ಏನೋ ಆರ್ಗ್ಯುಮೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಬೇಸ್ಡ್ ಆನ್ ಸರ್ಟನ್ ಪ್ಯಾಟರ್ನ್ಸ್, ಬೇಸ್ಡ್ ಆನ್ ಸರ್ಟನ್ ಥೀಮ್ಸ್. ದೇ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಸಮ್ ಕೋಡಿಂಗ್ ಸಿಸ್ಟಮ್ಸ್. ಹಳೆಗನ್ನಡ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ಹಳೆ ತಮಿಳ್ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ಇನ್ನೇನೋ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ಕೋಡಿಂಗ್ ಸಿಸ್ಟಮ್ಸ್ಗಳನ್ನು ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ತೀವಿ. ಕ್ವಾಂಟಿಟೇಟಿವ್ ಡೇಟಾನ ನಾವು ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ ಟು ವ್ಯಾಲಿಡೇಟ್ ದ ಇಂಟರ್ಪ್ರಿಟೇಷನ್. ಕ್ವಾಂಟಿಟೇಟಿವ್ ನಮ್ಮ ಹತ್ರ ಲಭ್ಯವಿರುವ ಡೇಟಾನ ವೆರಿಫೈ ಮಾಡಿಕೊಂಡು ನಮ್ಮ ಇಂಟರ್ಪ್ರಿಟೇಷನನ್ನು ಸಪೋರ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಿಕ್ಕೆ ವ್ಯಾಲಿಡೇಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ತೀವಿ. ಹಿಸ್ಟಾರಿಕಲ್ ರಿಸರ್ಚ್ ವೆರಿ ಡಿಫಿಕಲ್ಟ್, ಇಟ್ ರಿಕ್ವೈರ್ಸ್ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪೀರಿಯನ್ಸ್. ಆಬ್ಜೆಕ್ಟಿವಿಟಿ ಈಸ್ ಹೈಲಿ ಎಸೆನ್ಷಿಯಲ್, ಬಟ್ ವೆರಿ ಡಿಫಿಕಲ್ಟ್ ಟು ಕಂಡಕ್ಟ್. ಫೈನಲಿ ನಾವು ಏನೇ ರಿಸಲ್ಟ್ ಬಂದರೂ ಅದು ರಿಸಲ್ಟು ಮತ್ತಿನ್ಯಾವುದೋ ಕಾಂಟ್ರವರ್ಸಿನ ತೊಗೊಂಡು ನಿಂದಿರುತ್ತೆ. ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ಸರ್ಟನ್ಲಿ ಏನಾಗಿದೆ ಆ ಮೊಮೆಂಟಲ್ಲಿ ಏನಾಗಿದೆ ಅಂತ ಅನ್ನೋದು ನಮಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ. ವಿ ಡು ನಾಟ್ ನೋ. ಸ್ಟಿಲ್ ಇನ್ನೂ ಅಫಿಷಿಯಲ್ ರೆಕಾರ್ಡ್ಸ್ಗಳೇನಿದ್ದಾವೆ, ವೆದರ್ ಇಟ್ ಕ್ಯಾನ್ ಬಿ ಲಾಲ್ ಬಹದ್ದೂರ್ ಶಾಸ್ತ್ರೀಸ್ ಡೆತ್, ಆರ್ ಇಟ್ ಕ್ಯಾನ್ ಬಿ ಸುಭಾಷ್ ಚಂದ್ರ ಬೋಸಸ್ ಡೆತ್, ಆರ್ ಸಮ್ ಅದರ್ events, ಹಿಸ್ಟಾರಿಕಲ್ ರಿಸರ್ಚನ್ನು ನೀವು ಮಾಡಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಹೊರಟ್ರೆ ನಿಮಗೆ ಪೂರ್ಣ ತಿಳಿಯೋದಿಲ್ಲ. ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ವಿ ಡು ನಾಟ್, ಆ ಸರ್ಕಮ್ಸ್ಟೆನ್ಸಸ್ ನಮಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ. ವಿ ಲ್ಯಾಕ್ ದೋಸ್ ಥಿಂಗ್ಸ್. ಸೊ ನಾವು ಯಾವುದೋ ಲಭ್ಯವಿರುವ ಡೇಟಾಗಳನ್ನು, ಯಾರೋ ಹೇಳಿದ ಲೇಖನಗಳನ್ನು, ಇನ್ನೆಲ್ಲೋ ಬಂದ ಊಹಾಪೋಹಗಳನ್ನು ಇಟ್ಕೊಂಡು ನಮ್ಮದು ಒಂದು ರಿಸಲ್ಟನ್ನು ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ತೇವೆ. ಫೈನಲಿ ಇಟ್ ಲೀಡ್ಸ್ ಟು ಸಮಥಿಂಗ್ ಎಲ್ಸ್. ಬಟ್ if it is systematically collected, if the data is systematically evaluated to describe, explain and understand actions or events that occurred some time past, ಹಿಂದೆ ಯಾವುದೋ ಸಂದರ್ಭದಲ್ಲಿ ಆದಂಥವುಗಳನ್ನು ಹೆಂಗೆ ಡಿಸ್ಕ್ರೈಬ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು ಅನ್ನೋದನ್ನು ಉದ್ದೇಶ ಮಾಡಿಕೊಂಡ್ರೆ certainly the historical research is a very good input. It is a very good input and it is very much essential even today. It is very much essential even today. These are the challenges. Dependence on oral history. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಯಾವ ವ್ಯಕ್ತಿ ಹೀರೋನೋ ವಿಲನ್ನೋ, ಆ ರಾಜ ಹೀರೋನೋ ವಿಲನ್ನೋ ಅನ್ನೋದನ್ನು ಡಿಸೈಡ್ ಮಾಡಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಆಗೋದಿಲ್ಲ. ಇಟ್ ಡಿಪೆಂಡ್ಸ್ ಆನ್ ಓರಲ್ ಹಿಸ್ಟರಿ. ಡಿಪೆಂಡ್ಸ್ ಆನ್ ಓರಲ್ ಹಿಸ್ಟರಿ. ಅವನು ಒಳ್ಳೆಯವನೋ ಕೆಟ್ಟವನೋ, ಕೆಲವರಿಗೆ ಕೆಟ್ಟವನಿರ್ತಾನೆ, ಕೆಲವರು ಒಳ್ಳೆಯವನಿರ್ತಾನೆ, ಕೆಲವು ಏನೋ ಇರ್ತದೆ. ಪ್ಯೂರ್ಲಿ ಬೇಸ್ಡ್ ಆನ್ ಓರಲ್ ಹಿಸ್ಟರಿ we cannot conclude that this is the one. Oral history, no direct access to the phenomena of interest. ಎಷ್ಟೋ ವರ್ಷಗಳ ಹಿಂದೆ, ಎಷ್ಟೋ ಶತಮಾನಗಳ ಹಿಂದೆ ಆದಂಥ ಘಟನೆಗಳು. ನೋ ಡೈರೆಕ್ಟ್ ಆಕ್ಸೆಸ್ ಟು ದ ಫೆನಾಮಿನಾ ಆಫ್ ಇಂಟ್ರೆಸ್ಟ್. ಅದೇನಾಗಿದೆ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ನಮಗೆ ಆಕ್ಸೆಸ್ ಇಲ್ಲ. ವೆನ್ ವಿ ಡೋಂಟ್ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಆಕ್ಸೆಸ್ ಟು ಇಟ್, ಹೌ ಕ್ಯಾನ್ ವಿ ಕಮ್ ಔಟ್ ವಿತ್ ದ ರಿಸಲ್ಟ್ಸ್? ದ ರಿಸರ್ಚರ್ ಹ್ಯಾಸ್ ಟು ವರ್ಕ್ ವಿತ್ ದ ಅವೈಲೇಬಲ್ ರಿಸೋರ್ಸಸ್. He has to work with the available resources. ಅವೈಲೇಬಲ್ ರಿಸೋರ್ಸಸ್ಗಳ ಮುಖಾಂತರನೇ ಅವನ ರಿಸಲ್ಟಿಗೆ ಬರಬೇಕು. ದಿಸ್ ಇಸ್ ದ ಫ್ಯಾಕ್ಟ್. ಎಷ್ಟೋ ಸೋರ್ಸಸ್ಗಳು ಅನ್ಅವೈಲೇಬಲ್ ಇದ್ದಾವೆ, ಅನ್ಅವೈಲೇಬಲ್ ಇದೆ. ಆ ಅವೈಲೇಬಿಲಿಟಿ ಇರಲಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂತಂದರೆ ಹೌ ಡು ಯು ಡಿಸೈಡ್? ಹೌ ಡು ಯು ಡಿಸೈಡ್ ಅಬೌಟ್ ದೀಸ್ ಥಿಂಗ್ಸ್? ದ ರಿಸರ್ಚರ್ ಹ್ಯಾಸ್ ಟು ವರ್ಕ್ ವಿದಿನ್ ದ ಅವೈಲೇಬಲ್ ಸೋರ್ಸಸ್. ಇನ್ಕನ್ಕ್ಲೂಸಿವ್ ಆರ್ ಎವಿಡೆನ್ಸ್ less sources, inconclusive sources or evidence less sources. ಏನೇನೋ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ, ಸುತ್ತಮುತ್ತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ, ಅದು ಆದರೆ ಆ ಎವಿಡೆನ್ಸಸ್ಸನ್ನೇ ಕರೆಕ್ಟಾಗಿ ಪಾಯಿಂಟ್ ಔಟ್ ಮಾಡೋದಿಲ್ಲ. ಅಥವಾ ಆ ಸೋರ್ಸಸ್ಸನ್ನು ಏನು ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಅದು ಇನ್ಕಂಪ್ಲೀಟ್ ಇರ್ತದೆ. ದ ಸೋರ್ಸ್ ಈಸ್ ಇನ್ಕಂಪ್ಲೀಟ್ ಆರ್ ಇಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಎವಿಡೆನ್ಸ್ಲೆಸ್. ಬಟ್ ಹಿಸ್ಟಾರಿಕಲ್ ರಿಸರ್ಚ್ ಈಸ್ ಲೇಬರ್ ಇಂಟೆನ್ಸಿವ್. ಹಿಸ್ಟಾರಿಕಲ್ ರಿಸರ್ಚ್ ಈಸ್ ಲೇಬರ್ ಇಂಟೆನ್ಸಿವ್. ಸಾಕಷ್ಟು ಶ್ರಮ ಪಡಬೇಕಾಗ್ತದೆ. there is no guarantee that you will get. Of course, ನಾನು ಎಲ್ಲಿ ಕೂತಿದ್ದೀನಿ ಅದೇ ನೆಲವನ್ನು ನೀವು ಅಗಿತಾ ಹೋದರೆ ನಿಮಗೇನೋ ಸಿಗಬಹುದು, ಸಿಗಲಿಕ್ಕೂ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಯಾಕಂದರೆ ಇದು ಸಾಮಾನ್ಯವಾಗಿ ಇದು ಆದಿಲ್ ಶಾಹಿ ಆಳಿದ ನಾಡು. ಏನೋ ಕೆಳಗೆ ಏನೋ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ಏನೇ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ಅಥವಾ ಇರಲಿಕ್ಕೂ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಇದೇ ಅಂದ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ದಾಟ ಬಂದು ಇಲ್ಲಿಲ್ಲ ನಮ್ಮ ಈ ಫೀಲ್ಡನ್ನು ದಾಟ ಆಗೋದು, ಸರ ನೀವು ಅಂದಿದ್ರಿ ಏನೂ ಸಿಗಲೇ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಲೇಬರ್ ಇಂಟೆನ್ಸಿವ್. Either you may get result or you may not get result. Labor intensive, time consuming, ಸಿಕ್ಕಾಪಟ್ಟೆ ಟೈಮ್ ತಗೊಳ್ಳುತ್ತೆ. Since it is a historical research, it is time consuming. May produce no result also. Requires patience. Historical research ಮಾಡುವವನಿಗೆ ಪೇಷನ್ಸ್ ಇರಬೇಕು, ಡೆಡಿಕೇಶನ್ ಇರಬೇಕು, ಪರ್ಸರ್ವೆನ್ಸ್ ಇರಬೇಕು. ನನಗೆ ಈಗ ಹೊರಟಿದ್ದೀನಿ, ಇನ್ನು 2 ನಿಮಿಷಕ್ಕೆ ನನಗೆ ರಿಸಲ್ಟ್ ಸಿಗಬೇಕು. ನೋ, ಯು ಕ್ಯಾನಾಟ್ ಡೂ. ಫೈನಲ್ ರಿಸಲ್ಟ್ ಮೇ ಲೀಡ್ ಟು ಕ್ರಿಟಿಸಿಸಮ್. ಹಿಸ್ಟಾರಿಕಲ್ ರಿಸರ್ಚ್ ಆಲ್ವೇಸ್ ಎಂಡ್ಸ್ ವಿತ್ ಕ್ರಿಟಿಸಿಸಮ್ ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ಆಫ್ ದ ಅಬೌವ್ ಫ್ಯಾಕ್ಟರ್ಸ್. ಇಟ್ ಈಸ್ ನಾಟ್ 100% ಕರೆಕ್ಟ್ because certain sources are not available to you. Certain information, data is not available to you. In the light of those data, how can you conclude that this has happened like this? This has happened like this. Yellow beda, few years back, we don't know how Sridevi died. We really do not know the cause. How it happened? It happened. ಆ ಹಿಸ್ಟಾರಿಕಲ್ ರಿಸರ್ಚನ್ನು ನೀವು ಹುಡುಕ್ಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಹೊರಟ್ರೆ ನಿಮಗೆ ಎವಿಡೆನ್ಸಸ್ ಇಲ್ಲ, ಇನ್ಕನ್ಕ್ಲೂಸಿವ್ ಫೆನಾಮಿನಾ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಹತ್ರ ಇಲ್ಲ. How do you obtain the results? That's what I am saying. There are big challenges in conducting historical research, and the historical sources, they themselves have these limitations. Census is a one. normally conducted once in 10 years. 2021 ಆಗಿಲ್ಲ because of COVID. 2021 ಆಗಿಲ್ಲ, otherwise every 10 years one census result, one census survey will be carried out. In a census, data about all individual units, data about all individual units, data about all individual units is a census, are collected in the population. ಅಂದರೆ ಇಂಡಿಯಾನೇ ಸೆನ್ಸಸ್ ಆಗಬೇಕಾಗಿಲ್ಲ, ದೆರ್ ಆರ್ ಮೆನಿ. ನಿಮ್ಮ ಸ್ಟಡಿ ಪಾಪ್ಯುಲೇಷನ್ ಏನಿದೆ ಆ ಸ್ಟಡಿ ಪಾಪ್ಯುಲೇಷನದ ಆಲ್ ಯೂನಿಟ್ಸನ್ನು ನೀವು ತೊಗೊಂಡ್ರೆ it becomes a census study. It becomes a census study. In a census, data about all individual units, people or households are collected in the population. Very difficult in a larger geographic proximity. Very difficult. So, ಅದಕ್ಕೆ 10 ಇಯರ್ಸ್ಗೆ ಒಮ್ಮೆ ಆ ಸೆನ್ಸಸ್ಸನ್ನು ಮಾಡೋದು ವೆರಿ ಮುಂದಿನ 5-6 ವರ್ಷ ಆವಾಗ ಮ್ಯಾನ್ಯುಯಲಿ ಪ್ರಾಸೆಸಿಂಗ್ ಮಾಡೋ ಹೊತ್ತಿನಾಗ 10 ವರ್ಷ ಆಗ್ತಿತ್ತು ರಿಸಲ್ಟ್ಸ್ ಬರೋಕ್ಕೆ. ಈಗ ಸಿನ್ಸ್ ವಿ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಬಿಗ್ ಡೇಟಾ ಅನಾಲಿಸಿಸ್, ರಿಸಲ್ಟ್ಸ್ ಆರ್ ಈಸಿಲಿ obtained and very fast obtained. Very difficult in a larger geographical proximity, time consuming, costly, since census, when we are conducting, you are doing research, you are having you are getting data about all units, it is very costly. Large human sources are required. Large human sources are required. A sample survey can give equal results. Can give equal results. Of course, if it is done, our exit poll results, they are much similar to the final results with some here and there deviations. Sample survey can give equal results. Census ಏನು ಕೊಡ್ತದೋ ಅಷ್ಟೇ ಈಕ್ವಲ್ ಆದಂಥ ರಿಸಲ್ಟ್ಸನ್ನು ಸ್ಯಾಂಪಲ್ ಸರ್ವೆ ಕೊಡ್ತದೆ. ಓನ್ಲಿ ಥಿಂಗ್ ಈಸ್ ವಿ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಟು ಪಿಕ್ ಆ್ಯನ್ ಅಪ್ರೋಪ್ರಿಯೇಟ್ ಸ್ಯಾಂಪಲ್. ವಿ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಟು ಚೂಸ್ ಆ್ಯನ್ ಅಪ್ರೋಪ್ರಿಯೇಟ್ ಸ್ಯಾಂಪಲ್. ಊಟ ಮಾಡಿ FBS ನಂದು ಎಷ್ಟಿತ್ತು ಹುಡುಕು ಅಂದರೆ ಹುಡುಕೋದಿಲ್ಲ. ಫಾಸ್ಟಿಂಗ್ ಬ್ಲಡ್ ಎಷ್ಟಿದೆ ಅಂತಂದರೆ ಫಾಸ್ಟಿಂಗ್ ಬೇಕು ಅಂತಂದರೆ ನೀವು ಉಪವಾಸನೇ ಇರಬೇಕು. 12 ತಾಸು ಉಪವಾಸ ಇದ್ದ ಮೇಲೆ ತೊಗೊಂಡು ರಿಸಲ್ಟೇ ಫಾಸ್ಟಿಂಗು. ಅಥವಾ ನನಗೆ ಈಗ ನನ್ನ PPBS ಕೊಡು ಅಂತ ಏನೂ ಇಲ್ಲದೆ ಉಪವಾಸ ಇದ್ದು ಕೊಟ್ಟರೆ PPBS ಕೆನಾಟ್ ಬಿ ಕಂಡಕ್ಟೆಡ್. ಹಾಗೆ ಅಪ್ರೋಪ್ರಿಯೇಟ್ ಸ್ಯಾಂಪಲನ್ನು ನೀವು ಪಿಕ್ ಮಾಡಿದರೆ, ಕರೆಕ್ಟ್ ಸ್ಯಾಂಪಲನ್ನು ಪಿಕ್ ಮಾಡಿದರೆ, ಸ್ಯಾಂಪಲ್ ಸರ್ವೆ ಗಿವ್ಸ್ ಯು ಈಕ್ವಲ್ ರಿಸಲ್ಟ್ಸ್ ಆಫ್ ದ ಸೆನ್ಸಸ್ ರಿಸಲ್ಟ್ಸ್. Sample survey. It is again a form of ex post facto research. Data are collected from a chosen sample within the identified population. Chosen sample, please mark it. Chosen sample, ಯಾವ್ಯಾವುದೋ ಸ್ಯಾಂಪಲ್ ತಗೊಂಡು ಹೇಳೋದಲ್ಲ. Within the identified population, you have to choose the sample appropriately. Time is saved, cost is reduced. The sample is a representative sample. It provides better results. It provides better results. Representative sample provides better results. Large geographic area can be covered easily. Take sample from here, take sample from there, take sample from elsewhere. You can cover large geographic area by choosing samples. Possibilities of the information based or erroneous. There are possibilities of the information, either they are biased or erroneous. There is chance of being biased, or there are chances of being it may have certain errors. Possibilities are there. In a sample survey, some possibilities are there. ನಿಮಗೊಂದು ಬೆಸ್ಟ್ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್ ಹೇಳಬೇಕು ಅಂತಂದರೆ ಪಾಸಿಬಿಲಿಟೀಸ್ ಆಫ್ ದ ಇನ್ಫಾರ್ಮೇಷನ್, ಬಯಾಸ್ಡ್ ಆರ್ ಎರರ್. ಪರ್ಟಿಕ್ಯುಲರ್ಲಿ ಎರರ್ಗಳನ್ನು ಹೇಳಬೇಕು ಅಂದರೆ ನಮ್ಮ ಕನ್ನಡದ ಸೀರಿಯಲ್ಸ್ಗಳೇನಿದಾವಲ್ಲ, ಸಾಯಂಕಾಲ 7 ಗಂಟೆಯಿಂದ 9 ತನಕ ಬರ್ತಾವಲ್ಲ, ಅಲ್ಲಿ ನಾರ್ಮಲ್ ಆಗಿ ಮೆಡಿಕಲ್ ರಿಸಲ್ಟ್ಸ್ಗಳೆಲ್ಲ ಎರರ್ ರಿಸಲ್ಟ್ಸ್ಗಳೇ ಇರ್ತವೆ, ಅಥವಾ ಯಾವುದೋ ಬಯಾಸ್ಡ್ ರಿಸಲ್ಟ್ಗಳೇ ಇರ್ತವೆ. ಅದು ಅವ್ರದ್ದು. ಜಸ್ಟ್ ನಾನು ನಿಮಗೆ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್ಲು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ. ಸ್ಯಾಂಪಲ್ ಸರ್ವೆಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ದರ್ ಇಸ್ ಅ ಪಾಸಿಬಿಲಿಟಿ, ಐದರ್ ಯು ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಎ ಬಯಾಸ್ಡ್ ರಿಸಲ್ಟ್ ಆರ್ ಸಮ್ ಎರರೋನಿಯಸ್ ರಿಸಲ್ಟ್ಸ್. ಯಾಕಂದರೆ ನೀವು ತೊಗೊಂಡ ಸ್ಯಾಂಪಲ್ಲು ಕರೆಕ್ಟಾಗಿ ಇರಲಿಕ್ಕಿಲ್ಲ. ಯಾವುದೋ ಒಂದು ಸ್ಯಾಂಪಲನ್ನು ನಾನು ಹೇಳಿದ್ನಲ್ಲ, ಉಪವಾಸ ಇದ್ದು PPBS ಕೊಡ್ತೀನಿ ಅಂತ ಹೋದರೆ PPBS ಕರೆಕ್ಟಾಗಿ ಬರೋದಿಲ್ಲ, ಅಥವಾ ರ್ಯಾಂಡಮ್ ಬ್ಲಡ್ ಶುಗರ್ಗೆ ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ಏನೋ ಕೊಡೋಕ್ಕೆ ಹೋದರೆ ಬರೋದಿಲ್ಲ. ಯು ವಿಲ್ ನಾಟ್ ಗೆಟ್. ಸೊ ದ ಸ್ಯಾಂಪಲ್ ಮಸ್ಟ್ ಬಿ ಅಪ್ರೋಪ್ರಿಯೇಟ್, ದ ಸ್ಯಾಂಪಲ್ ಮಸ್ಟ್ ಬಿ ಕರೆಕ್ಟ್, sample must be correct, may be erroneous, may be biased. Force respondents to answer within the limitations. Sample survey nalli we are forced, respondents are forced to answer within the limitations. ಆ ಲಿಮಿಟೇಷನ್ಸ್ಗಳಿದ್ದಾವೆ, ಹಿಂಗೆ ಲಿಮಿಟೇಷನ್ಸ್ಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಇಷ್ಟೇ ಕ್ವೆಶನ್ಸ್ಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಇಷ್ಟನ್ನೇ ಆನ್ಸರ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು. ಸ್ಯಾಂಪಲ್. ಕಾಸ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಎಫೆಕ್ಟ್ ರಿಲೇಷನ್ಶಿಪ್ ಕೆನಾಟ್ ಬಿ ಎಸ್ಟಾಬ್ಲಿಷ್ಡ್. ಕಾಸ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಎಫೆಕ್ಟ್ ಇಷ್ಟಿದೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ಬೋದು ಅದನ್ನು, ಬಟ್ ಕಾಸ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಎಫೆಕ್ಟ್ ರಿಲೇಷನ್ಶಿಪ್ ಕೆನಾಟ್ ಬಿ ಎಸ್ಟಾಬ್ಲಿಷ್ಡ್ ಇನ್ ಅ ಸ್ಯಾಂಪಲ್ ಸರ್ವೆ. ಕಾಸ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಎಫೆಕ್ಟ್ ರಿಲೇಷನ್ಶಿಪ್ಸ್ ಕೆನಾಟ್ ಬಿ ಎಸ್ಟಾಬ್ಲಿಷ್ಡ್. ಸೊ ಕ್ಯಾರೆಕ್ಟರಿಸ್ಟಿಕ್ಸ್ ಮೇಲೆ ಇಟ್ಕೊಂಡು ಅಗೇನ್ ದೇರ್ ಮೈಟ್ ಬಿ ಸರ್ಟನ್ ಕ್ವೆಶನ್ಸ್ ಆನ್ ದ್ಯಾಟ್. ಕೇಸ್ ಸ್ಟಡಿ, ಕೇಸ್ ಬೈ ಕೇಸ್, applicable only to specific case. You cannot generalize it. Real life situation in real time. Real life situation in real time. Limited in space and time. It is very much limited to space, very much limited to time. There is an immediate impact because the case is being addressed. The specific case is being addressed. When the specific case is being addressed, immediate impact is there, immediate relevance is there. Particularly the medicinal field or agriculture or horticulture, whatever you see that there is an immediate result, there is an immediate action, there is an immediate impact, highly intensive. Since it is purely based on case, it is restricted to case, highly intensive. The only thing is cannot be generalized. All diabetic patients from today onwards take this tablet. All patients with hyperacidity take this tablet. All patients with high blood pressure eat this tablet. All patients with cardiac problem take this tablet. All people with cold take this syrup. You cannot generalize it, you cannot generalize it. They are specifically case by case which are decided by the doctor based on individual investigation of the patient. Cannot be compared. Cannot be compared. So you have given me this, sir, you have given him that tablet, you cannot compare. It is a case study. Whatever is relevant to you is given to you, whatever is relevant to that other person is given. In case study you cannot compare. Non-statistical in its analysis. This is another limitation of case study. Non-statistical in its analysis. These are the characteristics of case study method of research. Library method, very simple. It is purely based on records available, purely based on the records available. Analysis of records or documents. You are not going elsewhere, you are restricting yourself to the records or documents available. Basically it is a survey of the existing literature. Basically it is an existing survey of the existing literature. Whatever literature is there, whatever data is there, that you are reviewing. Review of literature. Use of secondary sources of information. Based on census, many PhDs have been done. Based on the census reports, many PhDs have been done. Based on certain documents of collections of Kuvempu or collections of Shakespeare or collections of some other thing. So certain research has been done. They have not visited here and there and all that. Based on the records which were made available to them. Secondary sources of information. Applying statistics to the segment of literature, published or unpublished. We try to apply some kind of a statistics to the segment of literature, not everything, to the segment of the literature, either published or unpublished. We try library method. This is what I call it as research metric studies. We try to apply some kind of a statistics to the literature, and we try to come out with what is H index, what is G index, normally the other metrics that we calculate. So these all come under library method. Data collection tools or techniques. How can we collect the data? So methods we have described. When we describe the methods, then how to do those things? One is questionnaire, and easily prepared. You can easily prepare, structured or open. Structured or open. structured. Normally we prefer structured. In structure, we give alternative answers within which they are supposed to answer. They are supposed to answer. Open. What is your name? Open. How was the class? Open. You can give any answer. How was the class? Good, okay, something. How was the class? Good, bad, interesting, not interesting. If you give alternatives, within those alternatives only that respondent has to answer. If it is open, it is up to him to answer whatever he or she wants. Questionnaire, structured and open. Schedule, it can be a structured schedule, it can be a standardized or formal schedule, or it can be an unstructured schedule or unstandardized schedule. You can use whatever you want depending on the interview that you want to conduct. But normally structured interviews are okay, but sometimes structured interviews may not help us. Just we will have some questions, we will answer those things. If the respondent answers something else, if we have to deviate from that structured one in order to get the good one, then the structured questionnaire will not help us. Or unstructured, whatever data is there may not be, you may not be able to quantify it. There are both good and bad with the schedules, I mean open or structured. Open, structured or unstructured, there are problems. Observations, uncontrolled, controlled, mass observation. Controlled observation, you are observing it in a controlled environment. Chandrayana was a controlled observation. Controlled observation, there is a control. Or you are going to some forest, you are observing the movement of a tiger or an elephant where nothing is controlled. Since morning 4 o'clock you want to see the bird and you are just sitting like this. The bird may come, may not come, there is no control over it. You do not have, it is done in a natural setting. Uncontrolled observation, controlled observation. Group discussions are controlled observations. Usually group discussions are done. So group discussions, someone is sitting there, they are observing who is taking initiation, who is forwarding it, who is arguing it, who is not participating, how the participation is taking place. So they observe everything. Controlled observation. Mass observation, I mean there is a large mass observation. Simply they are observing the whole mass, they are observing it, mass observation. Generic observation, controlled, uncontrolled, mass observation. There are certain projective techniques. Projective techniques. Projective. So how they are projecting? The first technique is role playing. What role it is playing? How that role is being played? Who is there? How is there? Role playing. When two tail enders are playing at the end, it is over number 30. Can you expect at the end of 50 overs at the rate of 20 per over? Or if two hitters are there, role being played, what could be the maximum score that they will project based on their strike rate, based on the wickets in hand, based on their strike rate and how many balls are left, who is bowling. Depending on all those things, some kind of a run rate is projected, final run is being projected. Role playing, word association, sentence completion. They will ask us, they do projective techniques, they will ask us word association. Cup associated with. Someone may say, "Ee sala cup namde." Word association. Or sentence completion. They will come out with a phrase and they will stop, they will ask you to complete. Projective. How you are looking at it. How you are looking at it. So they try to come out with certain projective techniques to know your observations and to know how it is being done. Projective techniques, role playing, word association, sentence completion. Delphi technique, focus groups, where filtering experts' opinion. They will choose the experts, They will filter out the expert's opinion and then they will come out. Delphi technique is one of the most standard focus group methodology which we can adopt it. It is filtering the expert's opinions. Sociometric techniques, individual's opinion about social structure. Sociometrics, individual's opinion about social structure, one is in favor of that, another one is not in favor of that. So, they collect the individual's opinion about the social structure, or you can have your own data collection sheets. You can decide your own data collection sheets depending on the nature of the data, what type of data you want to collect, what type of data is required. You can prepare your own individual data collection sheet, have that data collection sheet and try to collect the data based on the nature of the data that is to be being collected. So, these are the different data collection tools that you can use it. And the pilot study. Pilot study is conducted, it is a small study to test the research protocols, data collection instruments. Mic test ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಲ್ಲ, mic testing hello hello 1 2 3, mic testing hello hello 1 2 3, tuck tuck tuck, mic testing hello 1 2 3. Pilot study is like that, to test the research protocols, the data collection instruments, sample recruitment strategies and other research techniques in preparing for a larger study. Pilot study is quite important, it is very much essential in any research, in any method. It is quite essential. Help research team to become familiar with procedures in the protocol and can help them to decide between two competing study methods, whether shall I go for this or shall I go for that. It will help us, pilot study will help us to choose the appropriate research method to test the data collection process. Pilot study is normally conducted to test the data collection process, to obtain preliminary data for the primary outcome measures in order to calculate a required sample size, in order to know how much size I have to collect, how much big data I have to collect, especially in randomized control trials. This is very much essential. So, pilot study is part of the research process. It is a small study to test the research protocols, data collection instruments, sample recruitment strategies and all that. So, these are to be done. So, in order to do this, pilot study is normally conducted. Questions might be asked on these things. Methods of research are quite accepted and acceptable. The only thing is, as I told you, logically it could also be asked and multiple questions may also be asked. You try to prepare yourself for the on the topic research methods, and I hope the 3 units, the fundamentals of research, types of research and methods of research, I am sure you will get certain questions, some questions, and you will be able to answer them properly. Whatever I have told, as I told in the class 1 itself, is hardly 5%. It all depends on you to continue from here, refer the standard sources and collect the information, because as far as data collection tools are concerned, I have not described the structured questionnaire or open questionnaire or structured interview schedule or open interview schedule. I have not discussed much about those things, or even laboratory field of study or historical study. So, whatever I have given is a salient features. You can refer to the standard sources and collect the information and study from the point of view of NET or SET examinations. Also consider the past 10 years question papers. I do not say 5 years, just go for 10 years question papers. Based on that you decide. Once you are familiar with the text, at the fag end you can touch those multiple objective type questions books. Not now, because now you have to accumulate the knowledge, and those books are not continuous. They are, the entries are disintegrated. Question number 1 is different, question number 2 is different, 3 is different. You cannot prepare yourself in an integrated manner. So, with this I stop my lecture here, and if there are any queries, you can ask me at pgtharsad@gmail.com, and I will be taking one more class on higher education policies, governance and administrative in the later time. I hope these 3 units, and I am sure I have reached you with these words. I thank you very much. I will meet once again with higher education policies, administrative and governance. Thank you very much.